are black people dealing with a COVID-19 pandemic. They're also dealing with a racial pandemic. Black people are dealing with, what was it called? Secondary trauma. Watching other black people be killed on camera, and they're being traumatized themselves by watching this on the internet. So they're experiencing trauma and PTSD. They don't. Please watch the documentary on Netflix called 13th. It's about black people, and it was planned for black people to, like, slavery, like actual human enslavement was abolished or whatever, but it's not. Black people are being put in prisons like crazy. Black Lives Matter. Yes, ma'am. In this channel, we support Black lives. We believe Black Lives Matter. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Watch 13th. It's about the 13th Amendment where they abolished slavery, whatever, but it's still a thing in the world. It still exists amongst black people. And it's on Netflix. Yes. I suggest all white people, please take your time to educate yourself on the topic of Black Lives Matter, racism, slavery, all of it. Educate yourself. There are so many resources on the internet. There's Google, YouTube, TED Talks, Netflix. It's out there. You do not have to go around asking black people, what can I do? Take the initiative and educate yourself. Black people are tired of having to talk about this. It's time for white people to start doing the work. Do not ask black people. White people, it's time to educate yourself. It's time to take the initiative. Do not ask black people what I can do. And if there's a black person that is educating you, it's time. That is emotional labor. Black people educating white people. If there's a black person educating you, reach out to them. How can I send you can I send you a check? Can I send you money? Thank you for educating me. I read that on an Instagram post today. Yes, ma'am. Now is the greatest time to educate yourself. I remember in church when I would hear Black Lives Matter, I immediately thought, but wait, my life matters. Why is it just black people? And then one night I went into this coffee shop, and this was back in 2015. I went into this coffee shop, and remember, this is how I used to think. Black lives matter, only black lives? What about, I used to think like this. Meanwhile, mind you, I have never been discriminated against because of the color of my skin, ever. So why am I making this about me? White people love to make things about themselves. It's just how it is. So I walked into this coffee shop in 2015, and I heard someone passionately talking in the back. And I was like, what is that? And I go back, and there's a group of black people, and I was the only white person, and it was a small group. Now Black Lives Matter is huge. It's everywhere. But this was like when it was very, very controversial, just when it was started, that motto, that saying, Black Lives Matter. That's when it was becoming like very, it was a shock. Those words were like shocking to people. And it still is today, but back then, I heard him talking. He was reading a poem, this black guy. I was listening to him, and it stopped me for a moment. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This is not a saying to offend people. This is a movement. And do all lives matter? Duh. But right now, black people are being targeted. Black people are being discriminated against. They're being murdered by our police officers. So much is going on. And it's time, white people, it's time to educate ourselves. We have white privilege. Educate yourself on your white privilege. Educate yourself on this topic. It's time. It's time, darlings. It is way past due. When I hear Black Lives Matter, I no longer hear just Black Lives Matter. I hear Black lives saying, we deserve to live. And there was this like protest sign that was like, matter is just the bare minimum. Black lives deserve to live. Black people deserve to live. Black people deserve to be alive. They are human beings. Just like white people. Human beings. It's like, I don't know. You were put in that coffee shop at that time for a reason. Yes, I was. I believe that. I had no idea what I was walking into. Like this very eye-opening moment, you know? There's so many resources that are free. So many, you know, on the internet. We live in the greatest time to educate yourself. The greatest time. And it's so easy. It's so easy to go to YouTube and watch these TED Talks and listen to Black people tell their stories. And it's the easiest time to listen, and it's time. We should have always been listening. And as a white person, I am sorry to all of my Black sisters and brothers that it took me so long to listen. What's that saying? I may not understand, but I stand with you. You know what I mean?